Hello, today I want to talk about the planet Lilith, the so-called fictitious planet Lilith. I analyze the astrological natal chart. In no case should you rely on mythology either in terms of Lilith or in terms of other planets. That is, you should not mix astrology with mythology. When names are given to planets, celestial bodies, objects as a rule, they use all sorts of truly mythological components and endow planets and objects with the names of mythological heroes. But the correspondence of the mythological hero, his character, and the planet do not always correspond to each other, and often brings confusion among astrologers. As I think all professional astrologers know, in order to find out the true nature of a celestial object that we are considering astrologically, we must calculate the date, look at the date of its discovery, make a cosmogram or a horoscope of birth, the intellectual birth of this planet for us, people, and based on the natal chart of this event, we can understand what the planet is. This kind of confusion with mythology has affected a very important planet, a critically important one which many ignore, a planet like Lilith. Now I am talking about the so-called average Lilith. We are now considering it because it is the average Lilith that has great significance in people's lives. It can completely ruin this life, it can lead it to enormous achievements, or it can simply destroy it. And as you understand, not considering such an important celestial object is quite stupid. So what is Lilith? In most cases, Lilith is our dark side. Moreover, the dark side is not always consciously recognized by us, and even more so is not visible to the outside world. Lilith is inclined at a lower level because each planet has several levels or gradations, and we are now talking about the more common lower level of the planet Lilith. At a lower level, Lilith always acts as something confusing, something perhaps even introducing an illusion. Lilith at a lower level, as a rule, wants to seem but is not what she wants to seem to others. Lilith at a lower level is always supported by egoism, but carefully hides it as a rule, even from the person himself. Most of the most terrible actions of people, most of the moments when we, as we think, do not realize what we are doing, or what is even worse, justify our not very good actions, and there are completely disgusting actions with some good idea or so-called good intentions behind these events, can be the planet Lilith. And more often than not, it is she who is behind all of this. So what is Lilith? Like every planet, the planet Lilith has 3 levels. The lowest level of the planet Lilith is characterized by, that is, even the lowest level of Lilith also has a gradation. There is the darkest bottom to which a person can descend, and then his dark side becomes visible to others. It stops hiding. But the end of this person's life is usually deplorable, and the event is even more deplorable for his soul, because, like all reasonable people, we understand that our existence is not limited to the physical body, and we are talking about the soul in this case. We cannot help but touch upon this point. At a simply lower level, at a standard lower level, a person is guided by instincts. A person is attracted by his own ego, and he follows the attraction of his ego without thinking about others at all. The main postulate of the lower level of Lilith is, I do what I want and I use it for this. Dishonest methods. This can concern everything, absolutely all life, but it manifests itself more within the boundaries of the signs in which Lilith is located. At the second level of Lilith manifestation, a person realizes this transition between the lower level and the second. During this transition, a person realizes, as it were, the bad side of his past actions. He looks at himself as if in a crooked mirror. He sees his dark side, as a rule, is horrified by it, and from that moment on he can no longer, is not able to behave as before. That is, he tries to live correctly. And here comes the moment when we look at decent, good, kind people and think why they are so unlucky. It is quite possible that if we delve into their lives, we will understand that in the recent past this person did some terrible things, realized them. And now, living this life in harmony and kindness, he is forced to experience everything that he initiated outside, being at the lowest level of Lilith. That is, all the bumps that he once harmed others with some of his negative actions rain down on him. All this turns to him, and then we see a supposedly good person who suffers. But suffering, as we understand, educates our soul. Through suffering, a person becomes stronger or breaks. And if a person being at the second level of Lilith processing breaks down, if, for example, he gives up his negative qualities, looks himself in the face, realizes himself from the point of view of the minus, realizes his dark side, tries to live well but cannot stand it, resentment boils up in him. He perhaps comes to the idea that everything was good when I behaved badly, and perhaps I need to behave badly so that everything is good. And at this moment, if he does not withstand the tests, he falls to the lowest level of religion processing. And it is at this moment that it happens to him. He either falls to the very bottom. This is very bad, bad for the soul and bad for the events in a person's life. Or he can leave life completely, because his life, his soul in this incarnation will no longer have meaning. That is, the second level of Lilith processing must be perceived with gratitude. No matter how non-trivial it may sound on my part, but you need to perceive this period with gratitude. You need to try to endure it. This is the turning point when a person must look up a little. He must strive to stay in a position of kindness and compassion for others. This is the moment when we begin to shift our focus to the people around us, asking ourselves questions about what a person really wants, how I influence him, what consequences my actions will entail for the people around me. If we ask ourselves the right questions and sincerely answer them correctly, then we remain at the second level and strive for the highest level of Lilith processing. If a person withstands the second level of Lilith processing, he rises up, and then his lower level abilities, usually associated with cunning, with some dodginess, perhaps even some kind of game, they return to him, but from a position of kindness. It's like taking our threshold, a conscious threshold, a threshold that we looked into the eyes of, and using it for the benefit of others. So, for example, a deceiver, a cheat, a thief can transform at the highest level of Lilith into a brilliant writer. Because this is a manifestation of the same planet in the sign developer, let's say Gemini or Virgo Mercury. So a person who plays the victim, for example, then really becomes a victim at the second level of Lilith processing, and at the highest level becomes a grandiose, majestic, believing spiritual person. Perhaps his abilities even open up, and he certainly helps other people at the highest level. That is, the highest level of Lilith processing implies life not for oneself but for others. When we turn our attention towards society, towards another person, towards nature, towards all living things that surround us, and try to live in such a way as to benefit these living things. And then, as a rule, resources come to us, huge opportunities come to us, but always taking into account that we help, we live not for ourselves. It is in these three key positions that Lilith is played out. Once again, I want to mention that Lilith is extremely important, and extremely dangerous. So let's try to go through the sign of determination of the planet Lilith. Lilith in the sign of Aries. As we understand, Aries is an active sign. Aries corresponds to the first house, and Aries always says, I do. Aries does not accept as a rule someone's help. Aries is independent and wants to do everything himself. And being at the lowest level of Lilith development according to Aries, a person, his ability to act is ahead, one might say, his thinking. That is, he tries to be in action all the time. He can really cause a lot of chaos. And at the lowest level, such a person can turn into a very dangerous dictator, a very bloody dictator. And then we will see his true face. Lilith in Aries, as a rule, finds an enemy in herself, but always, because this is Lilith, justifies her warlike attitude to the world or to a person with some good intentions. Such a person may want to save another who does not need his help at all, thereby destroying the events of his life that should have developed with him. Lilith Vovni can start a revolution, for example, and will sincerely think that she is doing everything right. The more aggressive, the more assertive, and the more authoritarian a person with Lilith Vovni is, the lower is the position of his Lilith. And if he is completely unaware, does not look himself in the eye, and is aware of his aggression reinforced by his ego, he can turn into a very dangerous, cruel person and reach the level of a tyrant. If such a person over time reaches the second level of Lilith development according to Aries, that is, we understand that some kind of transformation is happening to him. In any case, the transition from the lower level to the second implies transformation, and here a person will certainly witness some act connected with aggression, which he will not be able to understand and comprehend at all. His brain, his soul, will not be able to accept it. That is, he must face cruelty, which even for him will be too much, will be excessive. And then this, as a rule, is a turning point for him, and at this moment the person moves to the second level. After this difficult situation, he, as a rule, can no longer do everything himself. He loses the ability to even start a business. Such a person begins to be ignored. All his ideas, some insinuations, all his undertakings, all his belligerence, so familiar to him, leave him. Moreover, the person becomes, one might say, invisible. That is, from a bright, independent, cruel person who does not ask anyone about anything, he turns into a shadow. Of course, it is difficult. Moreover, all fire signs and a lady, terminated in fire signs, give strength. The transition from the third level to the second makes it quite painful. That is, it is extremely difficult to just realize and find yourself at the second level of elaboration of Lilith. That is, some exciting situation must occur, and it can even be physically exciting, it can be dangerous to health. And for a certain period of time, it is different for everyone. A person exists at the second level of Lilith outside. He becomes invisible. He attracts the attention of all active, dangerous people. Where we mention the word dangerous, we usually associate it with the sign of Scorpio, and in fact it is. But Aries is dangerous in its own way. Aries is sharpness. Aries is a sharp movement. Aries is a cold weapon. Aries is a dangerous man. You can also say so if we consider Aries in the minus. And for example, an active woman who does not think about others, too active, takes the initiative in relation to other people without asking them, faces some situation that is dangerous, unfair, very cruel, after which she reconsiders her behavior and finds herself on the second level. From this moment on, she attracts dangerous people to herself. She attracts accident situations to herself. No one listens to her. She becomes just a shadow of herself. It seems unfair to her. But if she really courageously carries out this quest, if she is patient in this state, if she does not try, the thought does not occur to her, why was it good before? I want to behave badly so that I feel calm and good. If this thought does not occur to her, she moves to a higher level, and then, as a rule, the transition to a higher level is always accompanied by concern for someone, or it is one person, but, as a rule, the highest level implies some mass of people. That is, a person is entrusted with control or care for people, and here she can get to war on the third level, but everything will be fine with her. She will have funds. She will have huge opportunities. She can really come up with some idea. Depending on what house her friend occupies, she can do something herself for the sake of others. And even if it looks like this action is associated with risk, she will not suffer from this, and her financial side, her support, even human support, will always accompany her. That is, she will always have a shoulder, a person who will help her, and she will never be alone. Why do I say this? Because the sign opposite to Aries is Libra. If we develop the sign of Aries in a positive way, especially if Lilith is determined there, then the opposite sign of the forest is also in harmony with us. That is, this is a lucky person who sweeps away any obstacles in his path for the sake of someone, quite possibly for the sake of society, and this person is very lucky. If Lilith is deterministically in the sign of Taurus, I know a lot of people with Lilith in the sign of Taurus. What can I say? Firstly, they are easily determined. Why? Maybe I have such experience, but the first sign is that these people are not very good at making friends. The Taurus lead at the lowest level views the whole world as a free store where they can pick something up and take it away, something that they can use. It is very difficult for them not to use something if they allow the thought that it could be theirs. And this is how they treat friendship. This is how they treat the world around them in general, everything in their life in general. That is, from the position of a user, a consumer. It is very difficult for them to realize moments of heroism, for example. It is very difficult for them to realize moments of deep affection, some very deep emotional moments. I think that these people hide behind the material. It is easier for them to surround themselves with things and lose their spirituality behind materialism. They think that it is easier for them to live this way. The Taurus lead, as I already said, at the lowest level, values everything financially. They are inclined to dishonesty in money. You also need to look at what house it is in. Of course, it is determined for people in what house of the natal chart. Well, in general, a person simply treats everything as a user. If he sees something useful for himself, as he thinks, and if he needs to take this something or take some action that he considers useful for himself, no matter what it concerns, he will not care about the fact that other people will suffer from this. He is not interested in this at all. He will systematically achieve his goal. Such a person can take bribes. Such a person can betray. Such a person can take the last from the poor. And he will always explain this to himself as a good goal and present it. He will definitely present it all in such a way that as if he is doing a good deed. Many famous people of the lower level of Lilith in Taurus are engaged, unfortunately, in charity. And when we start to delve into their natal charts and their lives, which unfortunately we can only get from the internet, we are horrified because we understand that Lilith in Taurus, being at the lowest level, never does anything for others. Everything she does for herself. People around her suffer from this. They can leave a person completely destitute. It will not be difficult for them, for example, to deprive a person of property if they need this property. They can turn away from a friend if the friend does not suit them with his financial situation or social position in society. In general, persons in Taurus are very much appreciated by privileged circles. Illustration loves to be in them and to consider itself among the chosen ones. But they evaluate this chosenness financially. That is, what is the financial status of a person, what social circles he belongs to, how much an ordinary person can reach. This pseudo-chosen person, and calculating these components, the lead in Taurus comes to the conclusion whether this person is needed or not. In her world, there is no concept of friendship, there is no concept of warmth, there is no concept of gratuitous help. The lead in Taurus is not aware of the word gratuitous at all, and since Taurus this is one of the two components of the axis of danger and money, Taurus and Scorpio. As a rule, such people sooner or later in their lives face a dangerous situation that concerns either a threat to their lives or their freedom is under threat. That is, they can go to jail. They can get into a very bad situation, be left completely without money. That is, this position of Lilith in Taurus, it is not eternal, and it never goes unpunished. But it happens during the life of such people that sometimes their actions, or they witness the actions of another person, and they see from the side of a person, as in a crooked mirror, how other people suffer. Perhaps because of their action, perhaps because of the action of another person, but in any case, this action will reflect the behavior of Lilith in Taurus. Very rarely does Lilith in Taurus move to the second level. Lilith in Taurus is hard. They cling with claws to their head, their material state, to all matter that they can touch. And in general, by the way, they really like to touch, feel. They really like to feel matter, not spiritual. And they resist. It is difficult for them to exist on the second level. Moving to the second level, such people lose everything. They lose their fortune. Very often they lose some stability. People of privileged circles turn away from them. And since they did not know how to be friends before, people around them begin to take advantage of them, and Lilith in Taurus is left alone. As a rule, this is accompanied by legal proceedings or very serious illnesses. There is a threat to life, that is, a full package of troubles. And as you understand, Lilith in Taurus does not have, as a rule, great will. All very material people do not have great will, and being in such difficult life circumstances, they, as a rule, try to go back. They are looking for the position that they lost. They are trying to get back, to earn the fortune that left them. They try to establish contacts, but it does not work, and they really become outcasts. If suddenly they manage to return to their previous life, as a rule, this previous life ends very quickly. If Lilith in Taurus withstands this test and reaches the highest level of its development, then we see huge famous or little known, but in any case, these are very truly privileged people, people belonging to some inaccessible circles, billionaires, people who have a huge fortune. And as a rule, such people to reach out to charity, to patronage. Many of them are involved in helping hospitals that deal with the conditions of people close to death, hospices, hospitals for the treatment of children with cancer, and so on. That is, they do not turn away from the most difficult situations because they have learned to do so. And always, I remind you again, a Lilith of the highest level necessarily has great financial capabilities. In principle, she does not need to strain herself so that money comes to her. But there is a nuance here. A Lilith of the highest level does not reach out to money. As such, she does not need money at all. A Lilith of the highest level lives for others, and money comes simply as a means of maintenance or helping other people. Yes, the person himself can use this money, but such a person of the highest Lilith level will always prioritize helping others. In terms of Taurus, this is very noticeable. Lilith in the sign of Gemini at the lowest level. Lilith in the sign of Gemini is visible. It is difficult to hide. Such a person is always trying to have information. He distorts information. He can act as a mean person, using information incorrectly. He can steal information. That is, everything that is connected with information, with conversation, is used for his own benefit and to the detriment of people around him. It is not difficult for such a person to lie. It is not difficult, for example, to steal a dissertation. It is not difficult to fabricate someone else's work and pass it off as your own. That is, everything that concerns information is perceived, absorbed, ground up, and issued distorted. Many journalists, the so-called yellow press, not entirely correct, have a low-level Gemini appearance. Well, this is understandable, but it does not justify them in any way. Leads in Gemini tend to collect gossip. Many blackmailers have a low-level Gemini appearance. For example, in our astrology institute, I do not really welcome the training of people with a Gemini appearance. Why? because it is extremely difficult for them. Work through your Lilith. It is extremely difficult for them to resist the temptation to distort information. Information in our world decides a lot. Moving to the second level of Lilith processing, Lilith in illnesses faces unfair treatment. Such a person is already a victim of gossip. It is quite possible that information is stolen from him. No one hears his speech, and everything he wants to say is perceived incorrectly. A person can start to consider himself a tasty-tongued person and generally close himself off, stop talking and stop doing, for example, intellectual work. This is the wrong decision. And Lilith in Gemini, who has crossed the threshold of the lower level and risen to the second level, must definitely try to educate herself intellectually, get away from societies, from conversations, from absorbing empty, unnecessary information. Lilith in Gemini. She must reach out to information, she must study, she must reach out to the intellect. This will help her to withstand this test. She must not think about what others say about her. She should not worry about gossip, she must reach out to the highest level. From persons in Gemini of the second level, wonderful writers are obtained. And then a person comes to the third level. Wonderful scientists are obtained. That is, when a person works with information for the sake of others, not for himself. If this information is useful to society, a person acquires funds. He acquires many followers or people who support him. All this is Mercury, the ruler of Gemini. And such a person will never be alone. That is, in his case, there will be a lot of support in his life, both financial and human. So, Lilith in Cancer, one of the most, well, in general, all water determinations of Lilith are quite dangerous. Why? Because they are the most inventive and know how to maneuver. It is very difficult to grab the hand of a water sign lead. So, what is a lead in Cancer? A lead in a lower level Cancer is a semblance of care. A lead in a lower level Cancer is a person who gets into the soul, but gets into the soul for his own benefit. This is a very dangerous situation. And it is very bad if the lead in Cancer is not worked out. I emphasize this word. It is found in psychologists, doctors, psychiatrists, and people working with souls. Well, if the flu in Cancer occurs in a very successful person who is busy helping others selflessly, and we can think that his Lilith is at the highest level, but most often the opposite happens. And then the person seems nice to others, he seems a little strange to everyone, caring. This is a person you want to tell everything to, but be careful, because Lilith enemies. If he is interested in you, if he has an interest in you, he begins It is quite possible that she needs something from you. What? You need to look at the natal chart individually. Another type of lead in Cancer, as in other things, or lead in Pisces, is whining. That is, a person can play either a victim, suffer demonstratively and so on, thereby attracting attention to oneself and ruining everyone's life. Or, if we see a primitive woman and the release of marriage is located, for example, in the fourth house, we can see a mother who is proud of her motherhood, a mother who does not give her children a peaceful life, who clings to them with a death grip. And all this is presented as care. But most often, Lilith acts as a psychologist. As a person who understands souls, Lilith can dig into any soul and get what she needs from there in order to use it for her own purposes. Lilith are wonderful. Like any water sign, they are wonderful spies, wonderful some kind of, agents, and very, very bad psychologists and psychiatrists. You need to be extremely, extremely careful with them. Many patients are negative Lilith of the lowest level. Then they develop a tendency, for example, to suicide, or their lives are completely destroyed. Lilith moving to the second level, receive all the same things that she did in relation to others, she receives in relation to herself. She is really forced to take care of someone. The game she played, playing at caring for others, she now has to put into practice in earnest. That is, she has to care. No one appreciates her for what she does. She is forced, well, for example, to feed someone's children, to care for her relatives. It's like she's dragging a huge load of problems and care on her shoulders. Indeed, many can cry on her shoulder, but no one ever says thank you. From what I know people, if they are second-level enemies, they complain that lack of gratitude, probably. That is, the world perceives their care as existing, that is, it is normal, and the lead in Cancer suffers. The lead in Cancer at the second level, as a rule, has problems with the family. For example, the family may return. She herself has no one to cry on, no one to express her emotions to, and morally, such a situation is difficult, as in principle it is difficult for all water signs. But moving on, having endured this period of the lead in Cancer of the second level, she can move on to the third level. And then we will see brilliant psychologists, psychiatrists, people working with souls, not for themselves. Approximately, if you see a psychiatrist or psychologist with a lead in Cancer, whose entire wall is covered with diplomas, and he is very proud of the name, you can turn around and leave, because this person works for his ego. And if he gets into your soul, if he tries to help you understand your situation, most likely he does it for himself, not for you. And if a person of such a profession works for himself, he cannot be useful. The leader in Cancer, as a rule, is of the highest level, thinks about the world in general, that is, concern for the whole world is included. He can also participate in charitable societies, can get involved in some spiritual affairs, or participate in classes in hospitals and schools. Maybe even in nursing homes and some closed organizations. She may be interested in the institution of the family, but not from the position of her ego, but from the position of deep morality and care. And then we see a rich person who acts as a mother to many people. So Lilith in Leo. Lilith in Leo is a painful position, and I really sympathize with people from the position of Lilith in Leo. Why? Because Leo, as we understand, is a sign corresponding to the sun. Leo is a sign of creativity. Leo is the ego from which we can't escape. The only question is how we perceive it and what we do with it. Leo is kindness at the highest level. And these three moments, ego, creativity, kindness, are completely ground up by Lilith. She makes a salad out of them. And it is very difficult for a person with Lilith in Leo to be in this world. Why? Lilith of the lower level, Lilith in Leo of the lower level, as a rule, wants to be someone. She is truly unique. However, we are all unique. But if a person is born in Lilith in Leo, he is truly unique. But such people at the lower level of Lilith development do not realize their uniqueness, and it seems to them much easier to copy someone. Such a person chooses an object to copy or an unattainable dream and goes towards it. Such people can pretend to be very talented, not being them because they are engaged in their activities. They can blindly copy successful people in their environment. Moreover, Lithuania Leo loves politics very much, and as a rule tries to get to the highest social strata. Not everyone succeeds, of course, but if, God forbid, in Litvolv the lower levels break into political circles, we see very bad dictators. Here kindness as the highest manifestation of Leo leaves. Only dictatorship and ego remain here. Such a person is sure, such a ruler, a person will simply copy. He will not be himself. He will be bilious, angry, there will be no kindness in him, and his whole life will simply be a copy of the life of another person. It is good if this is just an ordinary person from the street, and it is bad if this is a person endowed with power. And usually the more power the lower manifestation of Lilith in Leo has, the lower the bottom of Lilith it corresponds to. And the fall of such a person as a rule is very painful and fatal. The second level of elaboration of Leo in Leo. As with Leo in fire, a person becomes invisible, but catastrophically unpleasant situations happen to him. Humiliation happens to him. Many can accuse him of indifference and malice. Such a person is not heard, not seen, and he becomes grey, invisible. Leo is brightness. And the second development of Leo in Leo makes a person like Leo in Aries, makes a shadow out of a person. And there will definitely be someone very bright in his environment who will overshadow him. And here the main thing is to hold on. A person should be in Leo and not try to imitate a successful person out of habit. It is good to go into creativity here. It brightens up these grey everyday life because the position is really difficult. Here you really don't need to go into loneliness, to leave the world, to close yourself off. It is necessary if you get into situations where you are morally hurt, where you are humiliated, where there is always someone next to you who shows you. You need to endure this courageously. You need to find your own. You need to find your individuality, your charisma, and discover kindness in yourself. It is kindness and selflessness towards the world around you that saves the Leo and brings them to the highest level. And here we see very famous artists, people of art, actors, singers. Here we see people who are usually engaged in charity work towards children, because Leo is a sign of childhood in general, in principle, childhood of kindness and spontaneous childishness. And of course the main postulate of Lilith in Leo is kindness. Now Lilith in Virgo. Lilith in Virgo. Lead at 9 is the lowest level, in general. Lead at 9 position, in our opinion, very critical. I don't know what needs to be done in a past life, how to live them, to be born in this life with Lilith in Virgo. Moreover, this position is critical both for the lower level and for the second level. For the lower level, it is very bad for others. For the second level, it is very bad for the native himself. As you understand, many Lilith positions on the second level are difficult for both life and for working through, but Lilith in Virgo. Now, the lowest level of the lead in the case is meanness. This is a person who builds, as it seems to him, the right system around. This is a person who can interfere in the relationships of acquaintances. A person who can carefully arrange everything at work the way he needs and remove unnecessary people. That is, this is meanness covered with a sugary smile. And when Lilith Devi arranges chess in the order they need, they always smile beautifully. They can talk sweetly. These are very nice people on the outside, outwardly. And Lilith Devi is extremely difficult to grab by the hand. Women with Lilith Devi, as a rule, have a thin voice. Men give the impression of harmonious, smiling, kind, wonderful people. But if we examine their life under a magnifying glass, we will understand that this is a cold, soulless, grinding like a meat grinder, all the people around them. This is absolutely indifferent to the world, incapable of experiencing any kind feelings, sympathy for anything at all. These are people who arrange the system in a way that suits them. They usually get pleasure from the suffering of others. Lewis in Virgo is guilty of this, and sometimes Lewis in Scorpio. But Lewis in Virgo here is simply a maniac who very slowly does his bad work. Lilith Devi gives the impression of being intelligent and clever, most often at the lowest level. Therefore, they are difficult to recognize. Lilith Devi at the second level a very bad position. I feel catastrophically sorry for such people, but on the other hand, I am happy for them, because they managed to rise from the bottom they were in. Lilith Devi of the second level, as a rule, is a victim of someone else's system. He is told what to do, no one listens to his opinion, he is controlled. He is always in someone else's circumstances, in someone else's system. He is not perceived by everyone, his opinion is not taken into account, his order is not needed by anyone. Lilith in Virgo in the 7th partnership house is especially difficult, especially in personal relationships. This is just a disaster. And of course, Lilith in Virgo on the 2nd level tends to go into some kind of employment, into work, to occupy herself with something all the time. That is, it is difficult for him to simply realize that he cannot live his own life. What does Lilith do in Virgo? Lydia Devi must go to the highest level. The highest level is caring for others, both with the help of the sign of Virgo. That is, it is care, it is constant work, it is quite possible, it is intellectual activity. Since Virgo makes up the Virgo-Pisces axis, the Virgo-Pisces axis corresponds as the Cancer-Capricorn axis corresponds to Virgo. Medical institutions of all sorts. And here it would be very good somehow, well, even to choose the profession of a doctor, even this would save the situation. That is, to translate this system, the intellect and the system, to connect them together and really try to help people. But without one's own interest, without one's own benefit. That is why literature at the highest level is very difficult to work through. That's all for this video for today. There will be a continuation. And I want to say once again that it is necessary to take into account the position of Lilith. The position of Lilith explains many of our actions, both good and bad. The position of Lilith can lead us to great success, but in order for us to come to this success, we must not want it. This is the main rebus of Lilith.